Video Tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter. As always, thanks for watching another edition of this week's EQ Video Tip. Before we jump into this week's tip, let's review the goals of EQ Video Tip. What's on tap for this week? We have a great article from Bernard Coleman, and he asks a question: are you an empowerer or an empire builder? And the real question is, what type of leader are you? And this goes for not only the managers, but also the individual contributors. Are you trying to empower your team, or are you trying to build an empire? Are you a micromanager, or are you someone who is helping teach and foster a community of growth? And as a leader, you ask yourself, do you entrust or you distrust your people? And am I empowering my people, or am I an empire builder? Because they're two different things and they're going to get you two different results. So let's go through some of the questions that Bernard asked within his article, understand what he's trying to put out, and understand the boundaries between an empire builder versus someone who is trying to empower his or her team. From there, we're going to understand what it takes to make the best teams possible. Tip number one, do you include or do you exclude? And it's important to note that if you're empire building, you're not empowering your team. You're likely undermining them, and you're ultimately undermining the success of the organization and yourself. So you need to decide, are you going to include or exclude people? Are you sharing information? When you get information, are you telling it to your team? Are you distributing it? Are you holding it as part of your power? Additionally, are you having meetings where the whole team has an opportunity to share information and put the team at an advantage in terms of knowing what the next steps are, how to finish the project, or collaborate amongst one another? When you do that, you allow everybody to contribute to the overall success of the team, which is key and vital to the success of any organization or any project that you're working on. It also builds less ambiguity into any project that's going on, and it allows people to be more effective in their roles. So think about inclusion versus exclusion. Tip number two, do you teach or do you torment? The best leaders out there teach their teams. They don't torment them. They ask themselves a question: if I'm the coach of a team, how do I get the most out of my players? How do I give them moments where they can learn from them? They can grow from those different mistakes. They get out of the way of their teammates instead of being a tormentor where they're tearing people's efforts down or criticizing them or just hurting morale overall. The important thing is to teach them and empower your people to do better on a day-to-day basis and give them the opportunity to become stronger. When they make a mistake, help them learn from them. Help them pick them up. Say, hey, this was a mistake, but here's how we can do it better. What can we learn from this, and how can we make our overall opportunity even better at the end of this project? In doing so, you've created a team that has a framework of growth, as opposed to one where you're constantly tormenting them and making them less effective and ultimately driving them away and creating potentially attrition within your company. So the bottom line is, make sure you're a teacher and not a tormentor. Our last tip, do you have a renter's mentality or an owner's mentality? What do we mean by this? Well, a renter's mentality means that you don't take full accountability. You don't take full blame when the going gets tough. Instead, you say, hey, that wasn't my problem. Someone else has to deal with it. But the ownership mentality actually means that you own all outcomes. Positive, negative, somewhere in between. The leaders who have that mentality of a renter, they never take full ownership of what's happening within a project. They're easy to blame someone else. They'll torment them. They'll say, hey, this is an external factor. But someone who takes full ownership and says, hey, this was my full responsibility. This was my project, the decisions that were there. This allows them to run the project, but also take a bigger view of the entire team and a bigger view in general to engender trust, to say, hey, I'm going to be responsible for this, but I'm willing to put the team's success on my future and my team's future overall, because they understand the hard work that's required to achieve success. Cultivating this leadership mentality is key and vital to prioritize your success and accountability across the team, because when you're accountable, everybody else wants to be accountable as well for their actions and your decisions that you do. And this means being transparent with your team and fostering that environment of trust even when it's difficult. So make sure that you're fostering that ownership mentality. Be willing to make and admit a mistake anytime so that your team understands you're there to correct it and make the team the most successful it could be. That's a wrap for this week's EQ video tip. Hopefully you find yourself as an empowerer as opposed to an empire builder. And if you're not, think about ways you can change it. But go through these questions, prioritize your day, understand what their meanings are, ask people on your team what they think you're doing as well, and then customize your work way so that you can become more of an empowerer as opposed to an empire builder. So that concludes our EQ video tip for today. Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember, use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ video tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.